Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Andrew Kaufman, and I came together with Dr. Tom Cowan today to tell you about our new conference, the True Healing Conference, this October 9th and 10th. And we are super excited because we have this opportunity to focus on the new biology, which is really the old biology with some new technological spins on it, as well as talking about what truly results in healing. We're going to be covering some really fascinating topics such as water and structured water, biophotons, biofield tuning, the holographic blood, and orgone energy. It's going to be really exciting. All these topics to help us understand the true nature of how our bodies work and how we can remain healthy and recover from disease.
There is a different way to think about biology, medicine, science than really most of us have ever imagined. These people who have been at the forefront of really what is a human being, what is life, how does biology work, and that's the only way to go forward, because that is what this whole COVID thing is all about. We need a different way of seeing the world.
We're talking about ushering in a new paradigm of biology and healing that we can be self-reliant, we can learn, and we can actually be really healthy, not chronically ill for our lives, but actually vital and truly alive as we're meant to be.
I am extremely excited about this conference. In the last 18 months, I've learned more about biology, medicine, and in some ways life than pretty much the rest of my life combined. I didn't expect that.
All right, Tom.
All right, I'm very excited. Join us.
As a busy dad and husband, I used to struggle to find time to cook healthy meals for me and my family. What was most challenging was getting enough vegetables in our diet, especially enough variety. We make nutritious and delicious vegetable powders made from beyond organic vegetables grown on small family-run farms. They're loaded with vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals that are necessary to keep our bodies healthy and build a robust immune system. Think of them as seasonings or spices that you use to cook with and can easily incorporate vegetable diversity and extra nutrition into the foods you and your children will eat. Join the thousands of delighted customers and see how our products can make a difference in your life.
Introducing a powerful dietary supplement, over 1 million years in development. A highly concentrated, complex, natural formula, rich in trace minerals as well as fulvic and humic acids. Mother Nature's ancient elixir for energy, revitalization, and long life. Shiljit Mumio means conqueror of mountains, destroyer of weakness. Take in the nutritional wisdom of the ancient past. Unleash the vibrant, healthy being inside. Become the conqueror.
people are beginning, like never before in my experience, to question again, not only what's really behind world events, but hey, what is this place? Who am I? What is going on? And the answers will transform this world, and it will transform human life. What kind of world do we want to live in? It's just a choice right now between fear and love. That's all it is, has been, and ever will be.
Think we're ready. Here we go.
All right.
Here we are. Welcome, Andy. Welcome, everybody. I cannot believe how excited I am. I have a feeling I'm going to know a lot more about the world come Sunday night than I know right now. And for me, there's probably nothing more exciting. And I'm just so grateful for everybody joining us in this. It's truly an honor to be able to speak to so many people and share not only what we've learned, but all the friends who are going to join us. And people who know me know that I like to get right into it, so I'm going to do it. And what I'm going to say to introduce this is, I think all of us who went to medical school have been told in medical school that you are going to learn a lot from your patients over the years. That's something that every medical student learns. Unfortunately, though, they don't tell us either what we're going to learn or even how we're going to learn that. And so over and over again through the years, I had patients, literally in the hundreds, who said, you know, I've had symptoms like lupus, and forget about whether lupus is a real disease or not, or whatever it was. And I drank horse urine, and I went to my doctor, and he said, there's nothing to this. There's no studies. You're a lunatic. Get out of here. And so I vowed that I would never be that kind of doctor. So from day one, somebody came in and they said, I have these symptoms like my joints and my skin and my kidneys. And they told me I had lupus, and I drank horse urine and I got better. I said, where'd you get the horse? And they said, oh, well, it was my friend. He had this red horse. And I said, well, did it have to be red? Yeah, if it was brown, it didn't work. So how did you drink the urine? Well, every Thursday I drank 10 cc's, and of course I'm making this up, 10 cc's of urine from a red horse. And how long did you do that? Well, for 2 months, then I was totally cured. Now, I'm not saying that means it's true, but I heard this story. I got every possible detail. And then lo and behold, a month later, somebody would come in, same symptoms, told they had lupus. I got all better. What'd you do? I drank urine from a red horse. Every Thursday, I drank 10 cc's. And then I would ask them all these questions. Same thing happened a month later. By that time, I'm looking into it. I find out 2000 BC, the Chaldeans gave people with sounds like lupus red horse urine, except they did it on Tuesday. And it turns out, then you find out that Jupiter was in the same relation on Thursday as it now used to be on Tuesday. So the next thing you know, you're looking into what's the relationship between Jupiter and, again, I'm making all this up as far as the details. And next thing you know, somebody comes in and says, yeah, I had this lupus and I drank horse urine. I said, and I would say to him, did you do it on Thursday? And they'd say, yes. How'd you know? Oh, well, the last 10 people, they all told me the same thing. Next thing you know, people from all over the world are calling me up saying, I got lupus. I hear you know about horse urine. So now I'm looking into the Chaldeans used it on Tuesday, and then Jupiter changed. And then there's double-blind studies on a chemical in red horse urine, and on and on and on. And that's how I learned about the world. I just kept following my heart and hopefully my mind. And eventually, a lot of things didn't pan out. Some did. And I have a feeling that most of the people who are going to speak in the next 2 days did a similar process. They didn't expect to find out that everything in biology practically is incorrect. They just were open to what they were seeing with their own eyes. They followed their instincts, they followed their mind, they followed their heart, and it led them to some inevitable facts. And that's what they're going to be speaking about today. And that, to me, is the essence of real science. The only other thing I'm going to say here is, in my years of doing medicine, I learned about a word that I call trying. So a person would come in and they'd say, I'm going to try to eat better. And I always would say to them, don't bother trying. Look, you can either eat this, you can either put this in your mouth, or you can put this in your mouth. Don't try anything, just put that in your mouth. You'll do a lot better. Oh, and again, at the end of every time I saw a patient, they went out with exactly what they could do based on my best understanding of what would get them better. They had it written down, no trying, take this tuning fork, put it on your chest, and sometimes it was use their intuition or whatever. And so here's my promise to everybody out there. At the end of Sunday night, by Sunday night, you will have heard the reasons, the theory, and here's exactly what you can do. You may have to look into it a little further to make your life better than it is right now. And to me, that's what it's all about. And we're going to make that happen, because that was my promise to my patients. You're going to go out of there knowing why I think this, what I think you should do, and then it's your job, obviously, to do it. And then you come back, tell me what happened, and that process will lead you to a better life. And that's what we're trying to do. Better life for the people who come, better life for the world. So that's my introduction. Andy, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Well, absolutely, Tom, but that is a great message, because really this new era of true healing that we're trying to usher in is based upon, self-accountability and responsibility. And of course, that requires the knowledge, which is what brings us here today. Before I talk a little bit more about that, I just want to say that an event like this requires a big effort and a big team of people to put it together. And so I just want to give a shout out to all of the folks who really were responsible for making this possible. And that includes the people at Autonomy, such as Joshua Hale and Richard Grove, Autonomy Unlimited. Of course, Tom's team of Asher, Holly, and Trisha. And then the team at Medicamentum Authentica, which is Jonathan, Brooks, the irreplaceable Martin, and of course at the head of it all was Leah. So thank you so much to all of you who put in the effort to make this possible and a success today. So we are here to take the initiative to try and usher in a new paradigm of truth in biology, truth in healing, to transmute ourselves from this allopathic model to something where people can really live healthy and vital lives. And we've tried to, go around and find the people who essentially have the best knowledge related to this future. And we want to try and establish a sort of basic curriculum or knowledge base that we're going to develop on, and invite lots of contributors to join in and to bring about this information so that we can truly heal ourselves and each other going forward. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and I'm so excited to start this special experience.
Great. And so now, and people who know me know that I'm a stickler for keeping on time. And that I also do introductions differently, because I can never remember who went to this college, although I do know that our first speaker, Dr. Andy Kaufman, did go to MIT. I remember that. But to me, that's not what's important. And it's my absolute honor to introduce Andy as our first speaker. Because what happened here is, even though I had been in the HIV dissident movement very peripherally and knew that viruses didn't cause disease, I inadvertently, I would say, gave a little talk at the end of a presentation on the heart. And I said, viruses don't cause disease. They're just poisons that are pooped out by the cell. And then something like 100 million people saw it. And I was very shocked, because I didn't really even know it was being videoed. And then I got all these requests to, from the BBC and CBC and whatever else, I don't know, to talk about this. And I realized I knew nothing about virology. That was the problem. And so I decided I better start figuring this out. So I tried to figure it out, but I wasn't getting very far. And then friend sent me a webinar, I guess, a talk that Andy gave, saying first, thanks for Dr. Thomas Cowan, and then essentially saying, Tom is right. And I remember thinking, is that right? Well, good. And then with the help of Andy and Stefan and a few other people in my own reading, I became fluent in virology over the next few months. And I remember in that time, because Andy helped me with a lot of the sticky points, I remember calling him up the first time and saying, "So why did you get into this?" And he said, "Well, two things. One, I don't like injustice. And the second was, I don't say anything in public that I don't know for sure isn't true." And I thought to myself, so there you go. I don't need to know anything else. and since then, it has been an amazing collaboration. And I am honored to call Andy a collaborator and a colleague. But I must say, I'm more honored to say that he's my friend, because even apart from everything I've learned in this collaboration, that is actually more important. And the only annoying part is every single time, including now when I wore my best shirt, Andy is always better dressed than I am. And with that, Andy, take it away.
Oh, Tom, it's a good thing you made that joke at the end, because I was tearing up. It's really been an amazing relationship, and I promise next time I visit, I'll take you shopping. Okay? So
it won't work.
All right. Well, good morning again, everyone. And I am going to actually start teaching about some of those methods that Tom alluded to that aren't worth trying, but you can either do or not do. And in my experience, the people that do them, including myself, have had great benefits. So what I'm talking about here is, and I'm just about to share my screen because I have this on a PowerPoint, is the 30-day triple purification experience, which is one protocol that I developed for detoxification. So I'm not going to have enough time to cover this, obviously, in excruciating detail, but I will definitely be doing that in the future. But I'm trying to give an overview of some important points, highlight a few things, and especially show how the scientific establishment has side-skirted the issue of natural healing in a way that really makes it difficult to find the quality of evidence that we would like to see, even though we know from our own experience that many of these things are extremely successful. So I thought I'd start off just talking about, well, what are these toxins that you have to detoxify from to get an idea? And it's actually, quite an overwhelming number of things. And these are some different ways that these toxins can get into your body. So, food, since the Industrial Revolution, we have gone from, growing and hunting for food to manufacturing food. And if you look at processed and packaged foods these days, you see many items on there that are not identifiable as food, but are, chemicals and processed constituents from various plants and other substances, and not to mention all of the agricultural chemicals, from the petroleum-based fertilizers to herbicides and pesticides. Of course, we're all familiar with glyphosate, but there are many other examples besides that. Then we go into the water, which I'm going to go into a little more detail in just a moment. We often take it for granted that what comes in contact with our skin actually gets absorbed through the skin to varying degrees. Our skin is not like a rubber glove, so to speak, but things do get absorbed. And when we have chronic exposure over time, of course, that increases. And even things like clothing, many types of clothing in this era are made from synthetic plastic fibers, and those leach plasticizing chemicals, some of them causing endocrine disruption. Of course, all of the hygiene and beauty products, women's makeup, soaps, shampoos, deodorant, antiperspirant, a lot of different things. Inhalation, of course, we're talking about air pollution, both outdoor and indoor, and there are many, many sources from factories, geoengineering, exhaust from burning fossil fuels and automobiles, all kinds of sources of air pollution. And then, of course, we have our own internal metabolites, and these can be just normal breakdown products of our energy production and other chemical mechanisms that go on in our body. But when we're under a stressful situation or have a fear response, then they're going to be different and more toxic metabolites that build up. And then, of course, from medical care. And this is something that should definitely not be ignored, but medications, immunizations, implants. We're all familiar with leaking breast implants, for example, but these are all foreign materials in the body that can cause toxicity and interact and disrupt our normal bodily systems. So if we just look in a little bit more granular detail on the image on the left, we can see some examples of different exposures and different chemicals that, such as polyaromatic hydrocarbons. PBDEs are the flame retardants that I'm going to talk about in a little bit more detail, heavy metals, etc. And then on the right, you see this is a picture of a water faucet, and it shows, oops, sorry about that, the common contaminants of drinking water, such as fluoride, which is put there on purpose, but other heavy metals like arsenic, lead, and chromium. Of course, chlorine also put there on purpose. Microplastics, something that is not often tested for if you have well water that's been tested. Volatile organic compounds. Also, I'm not sure if it's on this chart, but pharmaceuticals, yes it is on the top left, is a very important constituent, and antidepressants and blood pressure medications are some of the most frequently found in almost all municipal water systems around the world. So it's very important that you purify your water. And the best way to achieve that is either reverse osmosis or distillation. And you may have access to a pure water source, such as a primary water spring, for example. And you can, determine that through some further research. And I'm going to talk more about structured water later, which is obviously a big focus of our conference. So let's just highlight a couple of these contaminants to look at what type of toxicity may result. Now, we're talking here about fluoride, which was initially a toxic byproduct of aluminum mining, and companies had to pay to dispose of it until they sort of got together with the American Dental Association and came up with a scheme to have municipalities pay to put fluoride in the drinking water. And there are many studies like this, but here is a relatively large one from Canada. And what we see here is that the more fluoride in the mother, the lower the IQ score in the child. Okay, now we all know about this for lead, and people talk about lead as being a problem, but fluoride we're actually purposely adding to the water and causing this. And there are other problems with fluoride as well that many of you probably know about. Now I want to look at the PBDEs, which are the flame retardants. Now these are required by law in many states to be used in furniture, mattresses, bedding, and children's pajamas even, because of the risk of, fire. But these things actually cause quite a bit of problems. And as you'll see in this graph here, on the top left graph, that is the loss of IQ points due to the use of these flame retardants. And you can see that it's quite substantial. And in fact, it's even more significant than mercury, which is on the bottom right, Hg. Not quite as much as lead, but still quite substantial. And the top right curve is interesting because that's organophosphates, which are a type of pesticide. And you could see that after 2004, they stopped using them and the IQ points went up. So that's good confirmation that there's a certain causal relationship here with these chemical exposures and IQ. Now here are some other classes of toxins, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and these are quite pervasive from a number of sources, both from food itself as well as from industry. And you can see here various preservatives. Triclosan, which is used in many products, even toothpaste, can cause this problem. Various chemicals and detergents, solvents. BPA is one that many people know about, and many products are advertised as BPA free. However, they can still put in other bisphosphonols besides A that have the same toxic effects. So you're really not getting any safety if you're still using plastic. And then here is some more examples of the endocrine disrupting compounds and the sources that they can be in a lot of children's products, especially toys like phthalates, food, hygiene products, drinking water, even in dust and building materials. So it's important to have some indoor air filtration to prevent exposure to some of these products as well. All right, let's get into the meat. What is detoxification? Well, detox is actually something that your body does naturally, and it's done all throughout nature. In fact, there are probably some species of plants and animals that are really, their purpose is to detoxify an environment, like perhaps the invasive weed kudzu that you can see along many highways in the South. So this is kind of the general scheme of how detoxification works. In the middle, the square represents the human body. And you can see at the top left are all the toxins that we are exposed to. And, some of these things we can control, but not all of them. So the goal would be to minimize our exposure as much as possible. And we can certainly do that in our own homes. And I have lots of recipes and remedies, for example, ways to make safe household cleaner by just using a 50-50 mixture of distilled white vinegar with water and then adding several drops of lemon essential oil. Makes an excellent general purpose household cleaner that's perfectly safe. And then if we go to the right side of the graph, we see the detox output. So in other words, our body is putting out toxins. And I of course showed an image of a toilet there because that is the biggest way that we get rid of toxins, but there are many other ways I'm going to show on the next slide. And then also know that the cycle that I have at the bottom of toxic metabolites, that's not only referring to our own internal metabolites, but when we're exposed to toxins, our liver or other enzymes in our body may actually transform these foreign chemicals into things that are even more toxic than the starting material. And if you remember the flame retardants I was just talking about, that is exactly the case with those compounds. So it takes the PBDE, then it's processed by liver enzymes called the cytochrome P450 system, and a more toxic compound is produced by those enzymes. So this is something definitely to be concerned about. Now, just to differentiate between sort of the process of detoxification, which you could say would be liberating toxins that are stored in the body so that they can be removed, and then elimination, which is actually removing them from the body. And if you can see on the right side of this image, the organs of elimination include the skin, kidneys, colon, and lungs. And you can use techniques to take advantage of all those routes. For example, with the lungs, you can do long exhalation phase breathing or other breathing techniques such as Wim Hof breathing or pranayama, which is a form of yogic breathing. And all of these things will remove not only excess carbon dioxide, which will help alkalinize the blood, but also various other bloodborne toxins that are capable of being removed by the lungs. And then you see at the bottom of this chart that when the elimination is not possible, and this is a really key aspect, that the toxins get stored in the body. And it could be essentially anywhere. But one of the most common things is in fat cells, and that's actually a good thing because it's not going to do much harm in the fat cells. But many of us are walking around with excess fatty tissue that is just serving to store those toxins. And that's keeping us safe, but we can do some cleansing and get rid of those toxins as well. So the sequence of doing your cleansing is really key to make sure that it's safe and effective. And you want to make sure that you open up those organs of elimination first to allow any liberated toxins to leave the body. And of course, the key to that is water. Everything in our body is water dependent. And the water as a solvent is a key property for detoxification. So you have to have sufficient water, and the water has to be of good quality, meaning that it's purified and structured if possible. And of course, this will allow toxins to be removed from the kidneys and urinary system, including the bladder. So that is a key aspect. The bowels is the second big key that you need to open up the bowel flow. And this could be done by several methods I'll detail a little bit later. The skin is another excellent area, probably underutilized, and saunas and baths with various binding or chelating agents can be very helpful. And then once you have these elimination organs opened up, then you can work on a deeper cleansing to try to loosen up toxins in your internal tissues. And I'll get to how you go about doing that a little bit. So I want to cover the pitfalls now that I've kind of outlined the correct process so that you can make sure that these don't happen to you, or if it does, that you'll recognize what's going on and make the appropriate correction. And the two main pitfalls is ineffective cleansing, and generally that's just not enough. So if you start off increasing your bowel flow to 2 bowel movements a day and you're not improving, you should try going up to 3 bowel movements a day. Make sure you're drinking enough water. Maybe you need a more intense diet, or maybe you need a fast. So you can always increase the intensity, and you can do this in a very stepwise fashion if you're not getting the results. And the other pitfall is a cleansing reaction. And I'm going to make a little analogy to help you explain that. So we're talking about toxins being built up in your body and stored, and the detoxification is to try and get them out of your body. Right? So let's use the garbage pile-up analogy that I first heard from Dr. Jennifer Daniels. So we see this is a normal trash week where all the full trash cans are out, ready to be picked up. But in this situation, just like the organs of elimination may go on strike, the trash collectors have gone on strike. So the trash builds up week after week as they still fail to come and take it away. And you end up with quite a big mess. And once you have this much trash accumulated, of course, you're going to attract critters. And so in people, this is going to be, yeast and parasites, things like that, because they're essentially trying to eat up all of this excess toxicity before it kills you, and it's a big feast for them. So if we let this stuff come out of the house, but don't have the trash picked up, that's when we're at risk for a cleansing reaction. So we have to get that trash out first before we loosen things up. So how do we liberate the toxins in our body? Well, we can do this through chelating agents like zeolite and charcoal and bentonite clay. Sometimes just when someone is malnourished and they replenish their nutrition, that can lead to a cleansing reaction. If we use deep cleansing solvents, systemically in our whole body, like DMSO or turpentine, or if we use other systemic agents like chlorine dioxide, we can precipitate a cleansing reaction because those things liberate deeply held toxins. Sometimes just intense exercise, like running a marathon, that kind of thing. Doing other detox procedures such as juicing, and some regular activities like menstruation, when women are actually quite lucky that they have this monthly detoxification. And what happens is, though, that if they have excess toxicity in their body, as the genital area, the uterus, is preparing to undergo the menstrual cycle, it basically attracts all of the toxins that are around the body to get rid of with the menstrual products. And so if there's a lot of toxicity in the woman, this can overwhelm the system and cause those premenstrual symptoms like nausea, cramping, etc. So what we're talking about here is that these toxins are now floating around your blood, or they're concentrated in an area of your body, but there's not a way for them to get out. Okay, so what happens is they may settle somewhere else, and this is what can cause the symptoms of a cleansing reaction. And, you know, there often are flu-like general symptoms like headaches, muscle aches, low energy and weakness, dizziness. But there can also be focal symptoms like menstrual cramping, for example, or headaches. Sorry, I mentioned headaches, but if you have an injury at some site or some other process going on, you could get a worsening of arthritis, all kinds of general symptoms. And then as the body's trying to remove the toxins, you can get some symptoms that are related to that, such as a fever and sweating, which is really your body trying to dissolve and denature toxins and get them out. Also get them out through the skin, through sweating. Vomiting and diarrhea is your body trying to get rid of things, and skin rashes and eruptions as well. Often the body will try to get rid of them through the skin, especially if you are low on collagen. So this can be easily avoided by opening up the bowels and having plenty of water before you start these deep procedures. All right, so we're going to get into, let's see, how are we doing on time, Tom? Since you're a stickler. Well, if someone can let me know how much time I have left, that would be helpful. But I can't see the chat right now, so maybe you could say it.
Yeah,
but
30 more minutes.
30 more minutes, and that including questions, right?
No, that's then we have questions.
Then questions? Okay, great. So I can spend a little more time then in detail on the protocol itself. So I decided to put together what I think is, a very comprehensive cleansing protocol, but something short of the turpentine protocol. And so I put this together and did it myself over the month of September, and I wanted to tell you about it today. So here is the overall outline of the protocol. You can see it's 30 days. And on the first 5 days, I did a water fast. And then for the remaining 25 days, I was eating just a cleansing diet. And I'll go into details on all of this. And then starting on day 6, so during the water fast, I let my bowels do their natural thing. And I've had several experiences fasting. And if you're very toxic and you fast, you will probably have a lot of diarrhea. You'll probably have stuff coating your tongue and your mouth, like some kind of white or grayish film. You may even have a fever or sweats. And that's okay, because you can let your body do what it needs to do. When you're fasting, you're not really at risk of a cleansing reaction. But right after that, when you start resuming having food, then we want to focus on the bowels, but we're doing the coffee enemas first to work on the liver, and I'll get into a lot more detail on that. And then after we do that, for the 10 days, then we just go to increased bowel flow or water enemas. And then during the whole 30 days, there are these aspects of psycho-spiritual purification, and it's really, really important not to ignore this aspect. Most detox protocols are focused exclusively on the physical attributes and don't really get into this. But if you don't have the right attitude, frame of mind, and you don't try to develop your relationship with your body, your work on your life goals, your conflicts and relationships, things like that, you're really not going to get the full benefit, and you're going to miss that interaction between the 3 aspects of the self. All right, so let's talk a little bit about water fasting. And in general, I do not recommend dry fasting, because it is can be very risky after only a couple of days in terms of having complications like electrolyte abnormalities and such. Some people have had a lot of success, and if you want to learn more, I suggest you look into their work. But water fasting is an incredible tool for healing. In fact, just water fasting by itself can heal many, many illnesses. But in order to achieve that for a serious condition, you have to fast for an extended period, up to a whole 30 days of water fasting. And this can definitely be done safely, but it requires some supervision and expertise. So it would be the kind of thing you would have to go to a clinic, in my recommendation. But also, you can't work or do any productive activities when you're water fasting beyond a couple of days. It's really, really important that you kind of sit around and do nothing. And when I say do nothing, I also don't mean watch TV or read a book or watch YouTube videos, because nothing literally means nothing except sip water. And most people are pretty resistant or would have a hard time taking a full month to do this, but it is well worth it. If you're interested in that approach, I highly recommend it. But you certainly can safely water fast on your own for up to 7 days. And I chose 5 days for this fast, which was actually personally my longest fast. I've done a 3-day fast before, but it was not difficult in terms of craving food because I had the right attitude. I knew it was for healing purposes, but I did definitely have a major reduction in energy after the first couple of days. So for day 3, 4, and 5, I was definitely pretty low energy and sluggish, but that is a sign that my body was going through a healing process. And this time, because I've recently acquired the Analemma water wand, which is something that Dolph Zantinga is the inventor of, and he's going to talk about tomorrow, but it is a fantastic way to essentially make all of your drinking water not only structured, but structured in a way that it stays structured, so it's stable. So when you put it around your computer or your phone, it won't get denatured back into regular water. So all of the water I drank during this entire period was stirred with the Analemma water wand, and it was all reverse osmosis water to begin with. So just as a rule of thumb, about 1 quart per 60 pounds of body weight of water on a daily basis, and that should be mostly sufficient to get you through a water fast. It's important that you sip slowly and not chug the water, because then your body won't be able to absorb it and you'll end up peeing it out. So you want to just take like 1 sip of water a minute all day long. Make sure you get enough, and you should be fine for the water fast. And then transition to the cleansing diet. And this could also be called an elimination diet. And it's a very nutrient-poor diet, and it has a lot of fiber, and it's really puts your body into a cleansing mode, just like fasting does, but not quite as devoted. So when you're fasting, your body definitely changes its physiology. It undergoes something called autophagy, where some of the cells that are damaged kind of self-destruct and new cells are regenerated. And this continues to happen while you're doing this elimination diet, but not quite as much. But it definitely helps cleanse the bowel, and it just promotes a cleansing physiology in your body overall. And this is essentially a limited vegan diet. It should be 100% organic, and even better if you grow it yourself or from a local grower that you know and trust. But if you're eating anything that's not organic, you're eating poison, essentially. So you want to avoid that, especially when you're cleansing. You want to avoid any beans or peanuts or tree nuts. No dairy during this diet. You can eat some whole grains, but stay away from the gluten-containing ones. So, whole oat groats, brown rice, quinoa, millet, sorghum. These would all be fine. And you can also eat root vegetables for starch, white potatoes, sweet potatoes, turnips, parsnips, squash, etc. For the fats, you want to avoid vegetable fats, canola, safflower, sunflower, that stuff is all really poison. Sally Fallon Morell can tell you a lot more detail about that. Coconut oil is okay if it's good quality. It should be organic and virgin, but it has high saturated fats. You can use animal fats for cooking, even though this is a vegan diet, like lard or beef tallow would be great. And for salad dressings, it's okay to use extra virgin olive oil that's organic, but you don't want to use oils with a low smoke point for cooking, because when they burn or under heat, they'll turn into trans fatty acids, like margarine, that we all know how toxic those things are. So good for, not cooking, like salad dressings, marinades, etc. Beverages, you want to just stick to pure water and some organic herbal tea if you're so inclined, but no other beverages, no caloric beverages, and certainly no alcohol. And I talked already about the water requirements. So this kind of makes it easy, and you could have sort of like oatmeal with a piece of fruit for breakfast, have a salad, a cooked vegetable, and a starch for lunch, and then the same thing for dinner. It really makes things simple, and you'll start to feel the cleansing work. All right, now let's talk about the 10 days of coffee enemas. Now, this is something that I've become a big fan of. It's not the only way to work on the liver, but I think it's a very good way. And I've done a bit of it, a bit of experimentation to see, what kind of benefits there are, and I was pretty impressed. So the purpose of coffee enemas, which is different from regular water enemas or other enemas, is specifically to work on the liver. And I recommend a couple of additional supplements to support your liver's detoxification while you do this, which would be Shilajit or another trace mineral supplement, because those cytochrome enzymes that I mentioned before, those are metalloproteins. So we need the trace metals to have these enzymes function optimally. Same thing with other enzymes like superoxide dismutase, which helps quench free radicals that are formed from metabolic products in your body. Also need these trace minerals to function. Glutathione, which is a major antioxidant produced by the liver. It is made from the amino acid cysteine, which has a sulfur in it. So we need to make sure that we have a good source of sulfur in the diet. Now, cysteine-rich foods are not good for the cleansing diet because they're almost all meats or eggs. So that's something that you can eat beforehand or after. But during, you might consider taking a sulfur supplement such as MSM sulfur or N-acetylcysteine, which I've been told has recently been made prescription only, but when I went on the internet to search it, it was still available for purchase, even from places like Walmart. So get some while you can before it becomes unavailable. And of course, milk thistle. And this is a magical seed that you can grind up and take in a glass of water, or there's a capsule that you can purchase as well. And milk thistle is what will prevent you from dying if you eat poisonous mushrooms. Most likely it could save you also from Tylenol poisoning, although they never use it in the hospital. It is a really, really good product and something everyone should have in their house, in my opinion. And I suggest that you use the Gerson protocol from the Gerson Institute, which is readily available online. You can download the PDF. It's very detailed instructions to the procedure. It's pretty simple. There are just a couple of things that are different from regular enemas that, for example, you lay on the right side instead of the left side, and you have to hold the coffee in for at least 12 minutes to be effective. And the way that they say this works is that when the coffee is held in the rectum, that there is a vein that drains right from the rectum to the liver. And it delivers the various phytochemicals in the coffee right to the liver, and that's where it causes the bile ducts to dilate and release the sludge and stones that are clogging things up in your liver. And this is a diagram going into a little bit more detail about what happens when because the liver essentially filters toxins out of the blood. So anything that comes from anywhere in your body then gets into the blood, then it goes to the liver, and if the liver successfully processes it, it will put it into the colon, where it will come out into the toilet. And that's really what you want. So since the liver is the major pathway for all the blood to be filtered, if it's clogged up, it's going to back up the whole system. And many people have this condition, and here are some signs that you can tell that your liver is congested. Might be dark circles under your eyes, various types of skin conditions like seborrheic dermatitis, allergic and atopic conditions like eczema, nasal allergies, as well as asthma, and then certainly hemorrhoids and spider veins are other things that you might see from liver congestion. So if you have any or all of those conditions, I would say you most certainly have a congested liver. And even if you don't, you still may have some liver congestion and would benefit from a procedure like this. So you can see that once these toxins from the blood enter the liver, there are several processes that go on. The cytochrome P450 enzymes are here as phase 1, and they do a number of different chemical reactions on those toxins depending on the chemistry. So it's a system that can essentially cover almost any type of functional group and tries to make it into something that is less toxic, although sometimes that doesn't work out perfectly. And by the way, the reason for that is because our livers were designed to process chemicals found in nature into safe things that can be excreted. When we create synthetic chemicals that never existed, they're completely foreign to the chemistry of our bodies, and this is where the system can go awry, where it creates something that's actually more toxic instead of less toxic. So after all those reactions take place, then it goes into this conjugation pathway where eventually it is conjugated with bilirubin, which is what is essentially makes up the bile that gets finally excreted. And you see that glutathione, which is the circle on the bottom right side there, has a role there for the antioxidation. And then on the bottom, it mentions some other antioxidants that might be helpful to this process, such as, and it mentions milk thistle there, of course, also selenium, vitamin C, and does it say vitamin A somewhere? But those are all antioxidants, although I don't think they're all necessary, but they may be helpful as well. So what does the medical research community have to say about coffee enemas? Because this is something that's been around for quite a long time. We have the Gerson Institute. Coffee enemas are a mainstay of their cancer therapy, and they have, helped many, many thousands of people cure themselves of cancer. And I've spoken to several people directly who had this experience. So I would think that we would have a large body of research evaluating coffee enemas. However, there is not one clinical study that is published in the medical literature. Not one. We have case reports, but I'll explain how those are severely misleading. We have editorials that say that it's useless and dangerous, but there's no body of evidence for them to draw upon. And then in contrast, we know that enemas have been used since ancient times, perhaps not coffee, but certainly with water, and they have been known to be beneficial in many cultures around the world. And then we have that the medical establishment has actually looked at coffee, but coffee being, as you drink it rather than using it in an enema. And virtually every source has said that it's very beneficial, especially for the liver. And they all say that it causes dilation of the bile ducts, which can, in patients with gallstones, often report that they have worsening pain when they drink coffee, and that's because the gallbladder is trying to squeeze the stones out, and which is actually a good thing because that will resolve the situation, but it causes pain in the process. Coffee has been shown to reduce all kinds of liver disease, fatty liver disease, cirrhosis, cancer, fibrosis, and even shown to improve outcomes in hepatitis. So very, very good for the liver. So if we, I did find one article that attempted to find studies on coffee enemas, and of course it found 0 studies, but it did find 9 case reports which it included in its analysis. But this was really kind of humorous, because here's what it said: that the safety problems were due to rectal burns. So the not too bright people who administered these enemas, they did not check the temperature of the coffee, and they put burning hot coffee in their behind. What do you think was going to happen? But this is the main evidence put forth to say that coffee enemas are dangerous. All right, this reminds me of the famous McDonald's lawsuit where someone burned themselves on hot coffee. So common sense should be taken out of the research. Now, if we look way back, and we have to do a lot of digging to find this, in 1932, here's an article on colonics and mental disease. Now, I know this is not a coffee enema, but like I said, there are no studies published of coffee enemas, but there is this study, and it's quite dramatic, because they were actually treating severe mental illness in a mental institution with colonics, and they had an amazing recovery rate. Okay, now I want to say that some of these names have changed because this was published in 1932, but dementia precox, that is the name for schizophrenia. So we're saying here that 20% of people with schizophrenia recovered from their illness, which never happens with pharmaceuticals, just from a few colonics. This is amazing. Now, if they had a psychotic depression, it was 70% recovered. That's way better than any antidepressant trial even, though the trials are fudged. So this was a major result. And of course, it gave a review actually of other historical uses of colonics and enemas. And you could see that it's been used for everything under the sun, because people knew that it was effective and they kept trying it for different things. Now, while we can't find any study on coffee enemas, we can find a large body of evidence on coffee itself. And it's interesting because these are supposed to be comprehensive review articles, but not one of them even mentions coffee enema anywhere in the article. It's as if it's forbidden to talk about, but you can see here in the diagram on the lower left that it shows the benefits to the liver. And interestingly, there are benefits to other organ systems as well. But I just want to clarify that what we're doing here, because there are some, bad things about coffee. Like if you drink too much coffee, you know that you get jittery, you can get heart palpitations, it will cause your blood pressure to increase. And these things could be uncomfortable or even dangerous if you have a heart condition. But when you're doing a coffee enema, you're really focusing the coffee just on the liver. You don't really get that systemic absorption to a significant degree. Like you don't feel more alert or the effects of coffee when you do the enema. So any deleterious effects to the cardiovascular system or other systems will not be relevant to doing coffee enemas. Now here's another great title, The Magical Bean for Liver Diseases. I mean, in here, or was it the other one? It actually recommends that anyone with liver disease should be drinking coffee. Like that's how effective coffee is at helping the liver. Okay, I think it was this one, right? Daily coffee consumption should be encouraged for people with chronic liver disease. You don't often see a statement that bold in the medical literature. So this is really, really substantial. So it doesn't take much to reason that if coffee has all these beneficial effects on the liver when drunk, then it would also have the beneficial effects when used in an enema, but actually enhanced because we're focusing the coffee right on the liver. Now, once you complete the coffee enemas, you want to keep the bowels moving or switch to water enemas, and you only have to do one of those a day, whereas you would do 2 coffee enemas a day. But you can use a variety of approaches. And also, by the way, just having more water and getting out and walking and doing some physical exercise will also stimulate increased bowel movements. So herbal laxatives, and you can buy many preparations where there are mixtures, such as Dr. Jennifer Daniels' Vitality Capsules, or Dr. Schultz's Colon Cleanse formula, and there are many others. Or you can buy these individually and mix them, or you can make your own formulations. Some of them come in tea, like Senna, that you could take in that form as well. Celery juice is another good alternative. You'll probably need at least a pint to have a good response, perhaps more. Beets, if you boil them, they can be very effective. Prunes, very good, especially for children. By the way, you can also make a mixture of castor oil, like 1 ounce of hexane-free castor oil with about 5 drops of DMSO, and you can rub that over the entire abdomen from the ribs down to the pelvis and leave it on either all day or for at least 30 minutes. And this is a very good to use for children who can't take pills or won't swallow a bunch of celery juice, but it can work for adults as well as an alternative. And when you can't take castor oil internally on a daily basis because it will cause toxicity over time, but you're using a very small amount topically, and it's focused right into your abdomen, into the liver and the bowels. So this is perfectly safe to do for 30 days during a cleansing. Now, the psychological and spiritual purification aspects, and these really need to be much more individualized depending on, your stage of development, your stage in your life, your age, what the circumstances about what's going on, what challenges you're facing at the moment. And I would strongly suggest that you do a little bit of planning to kind of customize this approach for yourself. But here are some components that are really necessary to make this successful. So one is to have some kind of daily contemplation exercise. And when I say contemplation, what I mean is being in a quiet space, being still, not having any distractions. It's better if you can be around nature in the outdoors, but you can do this in the comfort of your own home. And that you spend a minimum of 20 minutes a day, and you can do this more, and you can do multiple sessions, where you just allow yourself to be and let the thoughts come in and out of your awareness. And you can set an intention, like I want to, understand better my conflict with my spouse, or, why I am shy around people, or whatever the issue is. But you could also leave it completely open. Now, if you're more of a religious nature and you want to use prayer for this, that is certainly acceptable. If you want to use some type of meditation, like, for example, I have done training in Vedic meditation, so I did that as my contemplation exercise. But this can be personalized to your own needs and preferences. It's just important that you do it, and you won't necessarily have breakthroughs on day one. It's the kind of thing that you need to keep up with on a daily basis, and what will happen is that you will become aware of certain things. You'll gain insight about the situation. You'll come up with ideas about steps you need to take to work on yourself, improve your relationships, whatever it is that is individualized to your situation. The second aspect is to work on breaking our addictions. And I once heard a good definition of this, that any behavior that if you go for 1 week without doing, that you have strong desire to do during that week, may be considered an addiction. So, for example, checking your smartphone all the time is something that I really struggle with, especially because of the kind of work that I do, that people, I'm in touch with people all day long, and I'm kind of tethered and always checking to that thing. So what I did is I put it, plugged it in and left it on a table as much as possible, and went to it when it rang, or every couple of hours to check something. And it was very, very difficult. This definitely would count as an addiction for me. But these could be any behavior. So watching sports, of course, drinking and drugs are the most things that we've heard about with addiction, but it could be any behavior. Okay? So it's important to gain insight and work on those addictions. Shadow work is a type of spiritual work where you kind of look at the dark aspects of yourself. So those times that you have like trigger reactions where you might lose your temper or behave in some unsightly way or get in a conflict or snap at somebody or withdraw, right? There's a lot of different ways you can have unproductive behavior, but this is a way to look into that. And there are various ways to approach this. This is something, that has been talked about by various psychiatrists and psychologists. One book that I recommend is written by Robert Augustus Masters called Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark, and it really gets into the nature of this work. But you can approach this by many, many different ways. There are Eastern philosophy ways to approach this, but it is important to take a look at that. You want to avoid any sexual behavior during this time, because one is that will be a distraction. It may be related to an addiction. Also, it's a big expenditure of energy, and you want to use your energy for healing and cleansing during this time. And I think what you'll find is that if you're in a sexual relationship, that after you complete this purification, that you'll find new intimacy in that partnership, and it'll be more special when you go back to sexual activity. So that's definitely a key aspect. And the last thing to consider working on is, and this is so important, especially in our current time when there's so much polarization and conflict between people, is how do we maintain our composure, especially when we're faced with adversity and with distress. And that is certainly something that you can, practice in many situations, and there are many ways to approach that, but it will benefit you so much in your life. So, to summarize, everything I've talked about today is certainly that toxins are pervasive and ubiquitous, and that even though we can do major things to minimize our exposure, we cannot eliminate our exposure, and we still have to do some kind of cleansing to maintain our health in the current world that we live in. And secondly, that detoxification is not some kind of new age procedure. It's not a wacky thing. It's something that your body does every single day. In fact, it's studied in formal disciplines like pharmacokinetics. So what we're doing with the detoxification protocol is we're just supporting our body's natural detoxification processes. Detox protocols can be safe and effective, but you have to know what you're doing to avoid the pitfalls, to make sure that you're successful. And there are many gimmicks out there, many money-making operations. It should be very inexpensive. If you notice that all of the things that I required you to buy in order to carry out these procedures are very, very cheap. And of course, water fasting is the cheapest. Detox, it actually will make you money because you will not be buying food. There are many methods that you can use to enhance detoxification, and you can customize these things to your situation and to your preferences, including enemas, nutrition, fasting, saunas, chelating agents, etc., and solvents. Liver is a key. It is like the biggest pathway to eliminate toxins from your body, so it deserves special attention. And we talked about at least coffee enemas as one way that you can really work on that, and some supplements that can support that process. And very importantly, do not neglect the psychological and spiritual aspects of the purification, because we are complex beings where all of these aspects of ourself are continuously interacting, and we need to pay attention to all those realms in order to achieve the optimal health and vitality. All right, well, that wraps it up for me. Thank you very much for allowing me to talk about this, and I hope we have some interesting questions.
Okay. I'm just questioning whether you can see me and hear me.
So, Tom, are you out there?
I am here, but I'm wondering if you can see me.
Well, I certainly can bring up some of these questions myself. Do you want to guide the questions, Tom?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Can you hear me now?
Sounds good.
Andy, can you hear me?
Well, let me start off with one from Mary Shore, who writes, I see you allow fats. Dr. Daniel's PDF says no fats, period, but perhaps she has changed her mind. What are your thoughts? Thank you for introducing me to her. I was not aware of her not allowing any fats. I thought that the animal fats like pastured butter were okay to cook the vegetables in, and salad dressing was okay. And nobody that I know of has had any problems achieving success by adding those. So I am not sure, but I'll definitely go back and look at her protocol. All right. Did everyone hear that answer? Because I think I just got muted. Did that come through?
Can you hear me now?
I'm not hearing you at all, Tom.
Control room can hear Tom.
Oh, okay. I can hear now.
And
Sorry.
we can hear your last question.
Can you hear me now, Andy?
Yes, I can. Sorry.
All
My
right.
speaker was turned off.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for that. So let me just suggest something, because there's a few questions about this, and just see if you agree. I think there's a difference, and I looked into this a lot, like even when looking into stories in the Bible and even the Passover story, like I for years thought, eating leavened bread, naturally fermented grains, was better than unleavened bread that you just, you don't do anything to get rid of the anti-nutrients. So it was a question, since I was like, heard about this maybe age 20, why did they do this cleansing time of eating unleavened grains at Passover? And my answer was, and the same with somebody going out 40 days in the desert and fasting, is there's a difference between a cleansing diet and a building diet, right? That should be very clear.
Absolutely.
Right. So actually, even when you eat unleavened bread, you're actually using toxins, in a sense, as natural chelators to probably bind toxins and eliminate them. So that's great for 10 days. But the problem is then you say, okay, I'm going to make a religion out of eating a vegan diet, right?
Right.
So we're not saying that, they didn't go out in the desert for 40 days and eat nothing and then do that for the rest of the 7 years, right? Because then you die.
Absolutely. And, so that is an excellent point, because there's like two phases of healing if your problem is principally toxicity. And that, is that first you do a cleansing phase, which is what I talked about today, and then you go into the rebuilding phase.
Right.
And this is going to, kind of depend on what's going on with your body. But let's say, for example, that you have arthritis issues. So the cleansing will help remove the toxins from your joints, but then you need to provide especially collagen to allow the joints to rebuild and repair the tissue that was damaged by the toxins. So you would go then into the rebuilding phase, where you want to basically eat things like bone broth and ham hocks and chicken feet and things like that to help repair the joints after, and that would be the rebuilding phase.
Right.
So if you're already very nutritionally deficient, then you could actually add a specific type of nutrition in combination with the cleansing. But usually that's a situation where it's a pretty severe deficiency. You could also rebuild briefly before you do the cleansing, for a couple of weeks with a certain type of food. But this cleansing diet is definitely, if you kept up with it, you would be very, very malnourished. And in fact, there's kind of a famous alternative healer. I cannot remember her name for the life of me right now, but she started doing a very restrictive cleansing diet, had a lot of short-term success, and then did it for like 2 years. And she was so sick that it supposedly took her 18 months to recover. Now, I'll bet, she tried to recover as a vegan. I'll bet if she ate some meat that she would have recovered in a month. But nonetheless, it can be really devastating if you continue this type of a diet in the long term. If you maintain a vegan diet in the long term, you definitely need to focus on certain types of foods, that, because some things are really, really hard to get enough of, like saturated fats, for example. And also, you kind of are would have to take some supplements of things that you just can't find in plants, like vitamin B12. Yeah.
Okay. So the point is there's a clear difference between this is a, it's like goes back to biblical times and even before. This is a detox program. And then you eat chicken feet, not like eating on chicken feet like that, but you make bone broth.
Well, you could eat them that way, but
probably won't do that.
It's a delicacy in Chinese cuisine, and something like 98% of all chicken feet produced in the United States are exported to China.
Yeah. All right. Switching topics a little bit. What would you say is the relation between what you're talking about and what we call a virus? Because I said viruses are poison. The cell poops out poison. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what, those images, right, that are called a virus, those, little particles that are breakdown products of cells, right? They have lots of other names. But the reason why those cells are breaking down is because they've been poisoned. So we're essentially seeing the result of the toxic damage when we see, those images. And we can use detoxification protocols to support our bodies, because, you could actually think of like a pneumonia as a cleansing reaction of sorts, that the toxins in the lung build up to a critical level such that the body, gets triggered maybe by an environmental stimulus like a drop in the temperature and humidity. And then it initiates a cleansing reaction where it tries to, expel the toxins out of the lung by, creating mucus production through bacteria as well, and then coughing, etc. So you can do things to support that. Like, for example, you can do enemas, when you get sick, and that will help the body get rid of the toxins from the lung, and they'll go through the blood rather than being coughed out. But they'll still, you're increasing their elimination. You can also do things like, and I'm going to talk about this in detail at the workshop next weekend, but you can use solvents to inhale and have them actually dissolve those things right out of your lung and allow them to go right in the blood so they can be removed, through the liver, as I discussed. Some people have even suggested using emetics, like something that makes you vomit, like blanking on the name of the compound right now. Ipecac, right? And because when you're vomiting, it causes you to choke and cough really deeply, so you'll actually pull stuff out of your lungs. That may be an unpleasant way to go, but it certainly is tried and true in Ayurvedic medicine, for example.
And then just briefly, so in the role of bacteria is if you don't, so in other words, the viruses, those so-called viruses, are not outside agents. They're breaking down of our own tissue, and you get you make these little particles which have these little pieces of genetic debris. And unfortunately, that's what we call viruses. That's probably why some sick people have more viruses.
Yeah.
Not because they're infected, just because they're breaking down more.
Yeah, they have a bigger toxic reaction. I mean, look at the people who get more severely ill with these acute, flu type illnesses, right? They're people who have chronic disease.
Right.
What is chronic disease? Chronic disease is a buildup of toxicity over time, right, that causes dysfunction and illness. So they're basically, already super toxic, and then there's even beyond that, right, they're more toxic and they're having this reaction. So the more you can increase their body's ability to process and eliminate this stuff, the better chance that they'll be healthy. But that's why they have such a more severe illness. And, the role of the bacteria would be actually to come in and eat up those particles and other debris that leaks out from all the dying cells.
And I've even heard, and maybe it's an urban rumor, that parasites can eat, 10, 20, maybe more times their weight in actually toxic metals. So even there, I have a feeling that, amoeba and other parasites can cause illness. But I think even there we should be careful, because they may be performing a role, which is to eat up some of the metallic poisons.
That's exactly my opinion. Parasites, and let's just talk about worms here. And just to be clear, they're ubiquitous in the environment. They're in our bodies. They're in all the animals. I mean, anyone who's been to the vet knows that, they use deworming agents for a reason. Now, how could those worms just be in the animals we live with and not in us? Right? It doesn't really make sense. But the thing is that they don't cause the illness, just like the bacteria don't cause the illness. They're opportunistic. And actually, we should really be grateful, because if they weren't there eating up those metals would be causing direct toxicity to our body. Right? And I've never heard of a client who had metal toxicity who didn't have parasites so far in my experience. Right. So, this is a really important aspect. And, those people are the ones who send me pictures of the worms in the toilet. So, but let's not blame the worms. It's like when there are worms there, that's a sign for us that we need to do something about it, because the worms can't handle the job on their own.
Exactly. In other words, we are a self-healing ecosystem, and the more we get the hang of that, probably the better our lives will be.
Absolutely.
So I think we're to 11:50, which I think that means we get a 10-minute break. Is that right?
Correct.
And then I'll come back and introduce our next speaker.
I can't wait. We have David Icke coming up next, don't we?
David Icke coming up next. So
fantastic.
10 minutes, 12 on the nose. We get going again.
All right. We'll see everyone back at 12.
Okay.
Did you know that 99% of your molecules are water? That's why the quality of the water you drink determines the quality of your life. Analemma is an architect of water in your body. It creates a liquid crystalline structure in the water you drink. So it creates coherence inside your body and mind. Coherence unleashes the body's own natural rejuvenating power. It revives, realigns, and regenerates you. Analemma, the architect of life.
people are beginning, like never before in my experience, to question again not only what's really behind world events, but hey, what is this place? Who am I? What is going on? And the answers will transform this world, and it will transform human life. What kind of world do we want to live in? It's just a choice right now between fear and love. That's all it is, has been, and ever will be.
hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. So, welcome back. I know it's a long day and of being on